On the faraway planet of Zyphora, the sky was a strange mix of deep purple and golden orange. Towering crystal spires reflected the light of Zyphora's twin suns, casting long, dancing shadows across the bustling cities below. Life here was orderly, predictable, and safe, or so everyone believed. But not everyone fit into the neat rules of Zyphoran society. Lyra was different. She was young, barely 16 by Zyphoran standards, but her curiosity burned brighter than the largest sun crystal. While her peers played with gravity-bound toys or recited official knowledge, Lyra spent her time in secret, studying forbidden archives about a species called humans. Humans, creatures from a distant planet called Earth, were considered primitive and chaotic by Zyphorans. Their history was messy, filled with wars, failures, and unpredictability. And yet, to Lyra, they were fascinating. She crouched in her small observation room high in the eastern tower of her city, staring at a flickering holographic projection. The archives had been smuggled out of the central library by a friend of hers, a quiet but loyal drone engineer named Tavos. Lyra had risked everything to get these forbidden records, but every risk felt worth it. Humans, she whispered to herself, her violet eyes wide with wonder. They survive everything, and they grow stronger every time. Her small room was filled with projections of human cities, portraits of leaders, and scenes of battles that had torn the humans' world apart. Lyra was mesmerized by their resilience. They had no advanced telepathy like Zyphorans, no perfect memory, and certainly no crystal-based technology. Yet somehow, they had endured calamity after calamity, adapting and surviving in ways her people would never consider. Lyra's fascination was more than academic. She felt a strange pull toward humans, as if they held a secret that Zyphora itself had forgotten. Her mentor, Aaron, often warned her to stop chasing illusions. Lyra, he would say, his calm silver eyes full of concern, humans are chaotic. They do not understand order. They are dangerous. Lyra would nod politely, hiding the spark of rebellion in her chest. She didn't see humans as dangerous. She saw them as extraordinary, and she longed to understand why. That longing became urgent one evening when a strange signal pierced Zyphora's communication arrays. It was unlike any transmission the planet had ever received. Not in the normal codes of Zyphoran communications, not in the predictable patterns of interstellar trade signals, but irregular, vibrating with energy and randomness. Lyra felt her heart race as she analyzed it. The signal was unmistakably human. She could not believe it. Humans were coming. Not in small scouting parties, but large, coordinated. Someone or something had sent them to Zyphora. And for some reason, the humans were responding. Her first thought was fear, but it vanished almost immediately. Fear was dull compared to the thrill of discovery. Lyra's fingers flew across her console, decoding the signal, tracing the trajectory, and comparing it with the archival data she had studied for years. Every number, every coordinate, every pulse seemed to shout a single truth. This was real. Humans were approaching Zyphora. Excited and terrified, Lyra ran to Iran's chamber. She could hardly contain herself. "Iran, you have to see this," she said, breathless. Iran turned slowly, his expression grave. "Lyra, what have you done? They're coming. Humans, they're coming to Zyphora. I've decoded the signal, it's real." Aaron frowned. "You've been tampering with restricted transmissions again." "Lyra, humans are unpredictable. We do not know what they will do here. You must not interfere." "But that's just it," Lyra said, her voice trembling with excitement. "They're humans. They survive everything. Think in ways we cannot imagine, and they could teach us so much. We could learn from them." Aaron's eyes softened slightly, but he shook his head. "You don't understand, child. Humans may seem fascinating, but they are chaotic, dangerous. Your fascination could bring disaster to Zyphora. Please, leave this alone." Lyra's heart sank, but her determination only grew. If humans were coming, she had to meet them. She had to see firsthand what made them so extraordinary. That night, while the city slept beneath the twin suns, Lyra slipped from her chamber, taking only the essentials. A small, portable analyzer, a datapad filled with human studies, and her courage. She moved swiftly through the crystalline streets, avoiding the patrols that glided silently on energy beams. Her thoughts raced. What would humans look like? Would they be as strong as the stories suggested? Could she even communicate with them? Hours later, Lyra reached the outskirts of the city, where Zyphora's atmosphere began to thin and the stars shone brighter. She could see the human ships now, tiny specks growing larger as they entered orbit. Unlike Zyphoran ships, which were perfect, angular, and precise, the human ships were irregular in shape, patched in places, yet somehow balanced in their chaotic design. Lyra felt a thrill of admiration. Humans could build such things? Without telepathy, without the precision of crystal energy, and yet here they were, arriving at Zyphora, ready to explore a planet that had never expected visitors. She activated her analyzer and began recording data on the human ship's energy signatures, noting every deviation from Zyphoran engineering principles. Her mind whirred with questions. How did they navigate space? How did they survive in hostile environments? How? Why were they so extraordinary? As the ship settled into orbit, a sudden alarm sounded from her console. Zyphora's sensors had detected her presence near the perimeter, a risk she had calculated but could not fully avoid. Lyra cursed under her breath and made a split-second decision. Hide, observe, and do not reveal herself until she understood more. Hours passed. From her hidden vantage point, Lyra watched the humans disembark. They moved with a strange combination of caution and confidence, scanning the terrain, checking instruments, and speaking in a language that was musical to her ears. They did not panic when faced with Zyphora's towering rock formations or the strange glowing flora. Instead, they adapted, using clever tools, improvising solutions, and helping one another in ways Lyra had never seen among her own kind. Her heart swelled. This was it, the proof. Humans were extraordinary. Not because of power or perfection, but because of resilience, creativity, and sheer determination. They embodied qualities Zyphorans had long forgotten in their quest for order and control. Lyra's excitement was tempered by a creeping fear. If her presence was discovered, she could face severe punishment. Yet, as she observed the humans working together, laughing at minor mistakes, and finding solutions to impossible problems, she knew she could never turn away. Humans were more than a curiosity, they were a revelation. When the human camp finally settled for rest, Lyra retreated to a safe distance. She could not wait to share what she had learned. But she also knew she had to be careful. Aaron would never approve of her involvement, and the authorities would certainly forbid it. For the first time, Lyra realized that her obsession with humans was not just about studying them, it was about discovering a new way of seeing the universe, a new way of understanding herself and her people. Humans were unpredictable, yes. Chaotic, yes. But in that chaos, there was brilliance, courage, and heart. Lyra gazed up at the stars, the human ships glowing faintly against the dark sky. Somewhere out there, on a planet far from Zyphora, humans lived, survived, and thrived against all odds. And soon, they would teach her something her people had long forgotten, that being extraordinary was not about perfection or control, but about daring to defy expectations and embrace the impossible. With her mind racing and her heart pounding, Lyra made a silent promise to herself. She would learn from them. She would understand them, and one day, she would reveal to Zyphora the truth that humans carried within them, the truth that could change everything. The adventure had begun. The human ships had landed on Zyphora's rocky plains, their engines cooling with soft hisses. From a distance, Lyra watched their movements, hidden behind a cluster of crystalline rocks. The humans were unlike anything she had ever seen, not just in appearance, but in how they moved, how they thought, and how they faced the unknown. Lyra's violet eyes widened as she studied them. They were smaller than Zyphorans, with fragile bodies and no natural telepathy, yet they moved with purpose. One of them, a tall human with bright eyes, seemed to lead the group. He checked instruments, pointed at the terrain, and spoke in a melodic voice. The others followed, listening carefully, but also offering their own ideas. They work together, Lyra whispered to herself. Not because they must, but because they choose to. Lyra had expected humans to be disorganized, reckless, or confused by the alien environment. But these humans adapted quickly. When a sudden Xiphoran windstorm swept across the plains, they didn't panic. They huddled together, secured their equipment, and found shelter under a natural rock formation. Lyra's heart raced. She had read about human survival skills, but seeing them in action was different. Humans didn't rely on natural advantages like Xiphorans did. They relied on creativity, courage, and teamwork. Every move they made seemed to defy logic. Yet it worked. Lyra knew she had to learn more. But observing from afar was not enough. She wanted to see them up close, to interact with them, to understand the spark that made them extraordinary. The next morning, she decided to take a risk. She slipped closer to the humans, keeping herself hidden among the tall, glowing grasses. She could hear their conversations, strange but melodic, full of expressions that made her curiosity spike even higher. "They're trying to map the energy fields," she murmured. Lyra moved carefully, but a small crystal snapped beneath her foot. Instantly, the humans turned their heads. Her heart stopped. She froze, afraid they would detect her. But instead of fear, she saw curiosity. One of the humans tilted her head and smiled, as if sensing someone nearby but not yet finding them. Lyra's pulse quickened. Humans were not afraid. They didn't scream or attack. They observed, adapted, and responded calmly. That was the difference. That was what made them extraordinary. She decided to reveal herself slowly. Stepping out from her hiding spot, she raised a hand in a gesture of peace. "Hello," she said in Xiphoran, her voice trembling. The humans looked at her, startled. The tall leader took a cautious step forward. Then, as if realizing she meant no harm, he nodded and spoke in clear English. "Hello there. Who are you?" Lyra's mind raced. English, one of the languages she had studied in the archives. She had practiced it in secret for months, and now she had to use it perfectly. I am Lyra," she said, bowing slightly. "I come from this planet. You are humans." The humans exchanged surprised glances. The leader smiled. "Yes, we are. And you are?" "Xiphoran?" "Yes," Lyra replied, her heart pounding. I've studied humans for many years. I want to understand you." The humans looked at her, curious but cautious. The leader stepped closer. "You've studied us?" "Why?" Lyra hesitated. How could she explain what she felt? Because humans are extraordinary. You survive. You adapt. She paused, searching for the right words. "You inspire." The humans were silent for a moment. Then the tall leader spoke, his voice calm but firm. "If that is true, then perhaps we can learn from each other. But you must be honest with us. Can we trust you?" Lyra nodded vigorously. "Yes, I want to help you. I want to see how humans survive here." It was a moment of choice. Lyra could retreat, hide, and continue observing from afar. Or she could step forward, fully, and risk everything to learn from humans directly. She chose the latter. Over the next few days, Lyra worked alongside the humans. She watched them examine Xiphora's strange flora, taking samples and analyzing them. She watched them build temporary shelters using local materials, improvising in ways she had never imagined. And she watched them interact with one another, showing care, humor, and patience in situations that would have driven Xiphorans to strict order or panic. One evening, as the twin suns set, casting long shadows over the plains. Lyra observed the humans gathering for a simple meal. They shared food, laughed at small mistakes, and told stories. She felt a warmth in her chest that she had never experienced before. Humans. They were alive in a way Zyphorans had forgotten. Her admiration grew, but so did the danger. Not everyone on Zyphora approved of her fascination. Iran had discovered her absence and was spreading word to the authorities. Lyra could sense the eyes watching her from afar, the whispers that questioned her loyalty to Zyphora. Then came the warning. A patrol of Zyphoran guards approached the human camp, their energy weapons glowing faintly. Lyra's heart leapt. The humans were unarmed, and any misunderstanding could be disastrous. "Stay calm," she whispered to herself. She ran toward the humans, raising her hands to signal peace. "They will not attack if we move carefully," she told them in English. The human leader nodded. "We follow your lead." Lyra ran ahead, using her knowledge of Zyphora's terrain to guide the humans safely past the patrol. They moved quickly, ducking behind rocks and shadows, the humans marveling at her agility and knowledge. For the first time, they were depending on a local guide, and Lyra felt a surge of pride. When the patrol finally passed without noticing them, the humans thanked her. "You're brave," said one of them, a young woman with short, dark hair. "Not many would risk themselves like that." Lyra smiled, feeling a rush of exhilaration. I want to learn from you," she said. "I want to understand what makes humans." Humans. The human leader looked at her with intensity. "And you will, if you are willing to keep taking risks. Humanity is not about perfection. It's about courage, curiosity, and the will to face the unknown." Lyra felt a thrill run through her. That statement, it explained everything. Humans were not flawless. They were ordinary in many ways, but their strength came from something Zyphorans had long ignored. The choice to persevere, to adapt, to face danger with determination and creativity. Days turned into nights, and Lyra continued to follow the humans, learning, helping, and observing. She began to mimic their methods, improvising her own ways to solve problems. She learned to take calculated risks, to think quickly, and to trust intuition as well as logic. At the same time, she realized that humans were not perfect. They made mistakes, sometimes serious ones. But they learned from them, and they supported each other in ways that Zyphorans rarely did. Lyra began to understand that true strength was not in avoiding failure, but in rising after it, together. One night, as the stars glittered above Zyphora, Lyra stood alone, reflecting on what she had learned. Humans were extraordinary. Yes, but not because they were perfect. They were extraordinary because they dared to be human. And in that moment, Lyra made a silent promise to herself. She would continue learning from them. She would document everything, and she would carry their lessons back to Zyphora, no matter the cost. She did not yet know the challenges that awaited her, nor the dangers of defying her own people. But she knew one truth clearly. Humans had opened her eyes to a world of possibilities that Zyphora had long forgotten, and she would never look at her planet or herself the same way again. The first contact was complete, and with it, Lyra's journey into understanding humans and the extraordinary potential they represented had truly begun. Lyra had spent days alongside the humans, learning from them, observing them, and marveling at their courage. Every moment revealed something new. Their clever problem-solving, their willingness to take risks, and their unwavering teamwork. But her admiration was about to be tested. Late one evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon and the sky turned deep violet, an alarm blared across the plains. Lyra's heart pounded. She knew immediately that this was not a natural disturbance. Zyphoran patrols were approaching. "They've found us," she whispered, urgency lacing her voice. The humans looked toward her, eyes wide. "What do we do?" asked the young woman with dark hair, who had already grown close to Lyra. "We move carefully," Lyra said, scanning the horizon. "Follow me, and stay quiet. I know a way they won't expect." Lyra led the humans through the jagged terrain, navigating narrow passes and hidden valleys. She marveled at how they adapted instantly, following her instructions, asking questions when necessary, and supporting one another with quiet efficiency. Even when the path became dangerous, they trusted her guidance, and she trusted them in return. As they reached a small cave hidden behind a crystalline outcrop, Lyra paused. "We'll wait here," she whispered. "The patrol will pass. But we must remain completely still and silent." Inside the cave, the humans worked together to set up a small camp. They shared food and water, checked each other's gear, and kept watch in shifts. Lyra observed them closely, fascinated by their selflessness and mutual respect. Zyphorans would have argued over territory or resources in such a situation, but humans shared without hesitation, thinking not of themselves first, but of the group. Hours passed, and the patrol finally moved on. Lyra breathed a sigh of relief. But the danger was far from over. Zyphora's authorities were becoming suspicious of her disappearance, and she knew that sooner or later, someone would try to stop her from interacting with the humans. The next day, as the humans continued to explore the planet, disaster struck. A sudden landslide, caused by Zyphora's unstable terrain, threatened to bury part of the human camp. Rocks and dust tumbled down the cliffs, and humans scrambled to safety. Lyra's heart raced as she acted instinctively. "Move to the left. Faster!" she shouted, guiding them to a narrow ledge that would protect them. Humans followed her instructions precisely, trusting her judgment. When the last of them reached safety, a large rock smashed the ground where they had been standing moments before. The humans were shaken but unharmed. They turned to Lyra, gratitude and amazement in their eyes. "You saved us," the tall leader said. "We would have been crushed without you." Lyra smiled, though her chest was still pounding. I know the terrain. I know how to survive here. But your quick thinking helped too. We survived together." It was then that Lyra realized something profound. Humans were not strong because they were physically superior or perfectly trained. They were strong because they adapted, learned, and supported each other. Every skill, every action, was amplified by courage, creativity, and cooperation. This was something Zyphorans rarely understood. But their relief was short-lived. As the group prepared to continue exploring, Lyra noticed a patrol on the horizon, moving with alarming speed. They were armed with energy weapons, and their intent was clear: capture the humans. Lyra's mind raced. If the patrol reached the humans, it could be catastrophic. She had to act. She quickly scanned the terrain and spotted an abandoned energy research station a few kilometers away. "We can hide there," she shouted. "Follow me." The humans moved swiftly, following Lyra's lead. Along the way, they encountered obstacles: jagged cliffs, unstable rocks, and deep chasms. But the humans were resourceful. They built simple bridges from fallen branches, used ropes to descend steep paths, and even improvised a pulley system to lift supplies. Lyra was astounded by their ingenuity. As they reached the research station, Lyra noticed that it was heavily damaged, its doors blocked by rubble. But humans didn't panic. They worked together, clearing debris and reinforcing weak structures. Within hours, they had turned the ruined station into a temporary shelter, complete with safe zones and observation points. Lyra stood back, watching them in awe. You can do anything," she whispered. The human leader looked at her, smiling. "We do what we must. And sometimes, we surprise ourselves." That night, as they gathered inside the makeshift shelter, Lyra reflected on everything she had witnessed. Humans were flawed. Yes, they stumbled. They made mistakes. They sometimes argued, but they always recovered. They learned, adapted, and pushed forward, no matter the danger. And through it all, they remained connected to each other, supporting one another through challenges. Lyra realized that her fascination was not just about humans' abilities, it was about their spirit. They represented everything Zyphora had lost: creativity, courage, empathy, and the determination to rise above adversity. But Lyra's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden alert. Sensors she had secretly installed detected movement outside the station. Zypheran patrols were approaching faster than ever. The humans looked to her, trusting her judgment once more. "We need a plan," Lyra said, quickly scanning the station's equipment. "We can't fight them head-on, but we can outsmart them." She devised a strategy, combining human improvisation with her knowledge of Zypheran technology. They set traps, created decoys, and used the station's energy systems to confuse the patrol. The humans adapted instantly, following her instructions while adding their own ideas, making the plan even stronger. As the patrol approached, Lyra felt a surge of adrenaline. This was the moment of truth. The humans moved with precision, executing the plan flawlessly. Energy fields misdirected the patrol, false signals led them away, and clever traps slowed their progress. Lyra watched in amazement. The humans were not only surviving, they were thriving under pressure. And through it all, they remained calm, thinking clearly, and working together. When the patrol finally retreated, frustrated and confused, the humans cheered quietly. Lyra joined in, feeling a deep sense of pride. They had survived against impossible odds, using courage, creativity, and teamwork, the very qualities that made humans extraordinary. The human leader turned to Lyra. "You've shown incredible courage and insight. Without you, we might not have made it. But you've also seen what we do, why we fight, why we adapt, why we never give up." Lyra nodded, her heart full. "I see it now. Humans are extraordinary because you never accept limits. You rise, even when the world says you can't. You inspire, and I want to bring that back to Zyphera." The humans looked at her thoughtfully. "That is a heavy responsibility," the leader said. "But if anyone can share it, it would be someone willing to learn and take risks. Someone like you." Lyra felt a swell of determination. She knew that returning to Zyphera would be difficult. Authorities would question her, punish her, and try to stop her from sharing what she had learned. But the humans had shown her a truth Zyphera had forgotten. Strength was not in fear, order, or perfection. Strength was in courage, creativity, and the willingness to rise above challenges together. As the twin suns began to rise, casting their golden light across Zyphera's plains, Lyra looked at the humans. She realized that her journey had only begun. The lessons she had learned would shape not just her future, but the future of her entire planet. Humans were not perfect, but they were extraordinary. And Lyra would ensure that Zyphera never forgot it. The turning point had come. The humans had survived Zyphera's dangers, and Lyra had discovered the truth that would change everything. Bravery, ingenuity, and compassion could overcome even the greatest obstacles. And so, with the humans preparing for their next mission on Zyphera, Lyra stood ready. She had crossed the line between observer and participant, and there was no turning back. Whatever challenges awaited, she would face them with the courage and creativity she had learned from the humans she now admired more than anything. The journey into the extraordinary had begun. The humans had spent weeks on Zyphera, exploring, learning, and adapting to the alien environment. Every day had been a lesson for Lyra, showing her the courage, ingenuity, and resilience of this strange, fascinating species. But now, the time had come for the humans to leave. Their mission on Zyphera was complete, and they were preparing to return to their distant home. Lyra watched them from the observation point she had claimed as her own. Hidden high among the crystal cliffs, she felt a strange mix of pride and sadness. She had grown close to the humans in a short time. She had learned from them, worked with them, and experienced moments of danger and triumph together. And now, they were leaving. The tall human leader approached her. "Lyra," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You've done more than just observe us. You've helped us, guided us, and even saved us. You've shown courage and intelligence beyond your years." Lyra bowed slightly. I have learned so much. From all of you. You have opened my eyes, the human leader smiled. Then you understand what we are, what we represent. Humans are ordinary, yet we do extraordinary things. Not because we are perfect, but because we refuse to accept limits. Remember that, Lyra. It is our greatest strength. Lyra nodded. Those words echoed in her mind. Humans had survived impossible odds, faced dangers that would have crushed her own species, and yet remained compassionate, clever, and courageous. They were extraordinary not because of power, but because of spirit. As the humans boarded their ships, Lyra felt a sudden pang of longing. She wanted to go with them, to continue learning, to explore the stars as they did. But she knew she could not. Her place was on Zyphora, and she had a mission of her own to bring the truth about humans back to her people. The ships lifted off, leaving a trail of light across Zyphora's purple sky. Lyra watched until they were gone, a quiet determination settling over her. She had seen what humans could do, and she would ensure that Zyphora learned from them, too. Returning to her city, Lyra faced immediate challenges. Aaron was waiting, his expression stern. Lyra, he said, you have been gone for weeks. Do you realize the risk you have taken? The authorities will not be pleased. I have a... Lyra held her head high. I understand the risks, Aaron. But I have learned something important, something that can change our world. Humans are extraordinary. Not because of strength or perfection, but because of courage, creativity, and the willingness to face the unknown. Zyphora can learn from them. Aaron's eyes narrowed. But he did not interrupt. He had always known Lyra was different, that she had a spark few Zyphorans possessed. And you intend to share this? With whom? He asked. Lyra took a deep breath. With anyone willing to listen. Our society has grown too rigid, too focused on order and control. We have forgotten curiosity, courage, and adaptability. Humans remind me of what we have lost and what we can regain. Aaron remained silent for a long moment. Finally, he said, it will not be easy. Many will resist your ideas. But perhaps you are right. Perhaps Zyphora needs a reminder of what it means to grow beyond fear. Lyra felt a surge of hope. If even Aaron, her cautious mentor, believed in the value of her discoveries, she could start a movement. She began documenting everything. The humans' methods, their creativity, their teamwork, and their courage. She wrote detailed notes on how they approached challenges, solved problems, and adapted to new environments. Lyra realized that her obsession with humans had never been about admiration alone. It had been about discovering what was possible not just for humans, but for herself and her people. Humans were a mirror, reflecting qualities that Zyphora had buried under rules and structure. Bravery, ingenuity, and the willingness to embrace the unknown. Days turned into weeks as Lyra compiled her findings. She shared them secretly with friends she trusted, including Tavos, who had helped her access the forbidden archives. Together, they created a comprehensive account of human capabilities and values. They called it The Human Way, a guide for Zyphorans who wished to learn from Earth's remarkable species. But not everyone welcomed her ideas. Word spread quickly, and some Zyphorans viewed her fascination with humans as dangerous. Meetings were called, questions were asked, and Lyra was summoned before the Council of Elders. You claim humans are extraordinary, one elder said, voice sharp. Why should we trust a species that lacks discipline, telepathy, and our advanced technology? What proof do you offer? Lyra stepped forward confidently, holding her datapad. I have observed humans directly. I have worked alongside them. I have seen their courage, creativity, and resilience. They survive against impossible odds, not because they are perfect, but because they adapt, learn, and support one another. That is proof enough. The elders murmured among themselves, skeptical yet intrigued. Lyra continued, Zyphora has grown rigid and fearful. We follow rules without question, avoiding risk at every turn. Humans remind us that strength lies not in order alone, but in courage, curiosity, and the willingness to face the unknown. We can learn from them, and we must. A long silence followed. Lyra held her ground, feeling the weight of her words. Finally, one elder spoke. "You may be young, Lyra, but your observations are compelling. If what you say is true, then our society has indeed forgotten something vital. Perhaps it is time we remember." Encouraged by their response, Lyra smiled. She knew this was only the beginning. Changing Xiphora would take time, patience, and persistence. But she also knew that she had a gift, the knowledge of humans, their spirit, and their extraordinary way of surviving and thriving. Over the following months, Lyra worked tirelessly. She shared her accounts of humans with students, scholars, and curious citizens. She organized discussions, demonstrations, and simulations, showing how humans solved problems creatively, supported each other, and embraced challenges. Slowly, minds began to change. Young Xiphorans, inspired by the stories of humans, began experimenting with new ideas, taking calculated risks, and exploring beyond the confines of their cities. They learned that failure was not shameful, but a step toward growth. They discovered that cooperation and empathy could solve problems more effectively than strict hierarchy. Lyra watched these changes with pride. Humans had not only taught her lessons, they had planted seeds for the transformation of her entire planet. Xiphora was beginning to rediscover qualities it had lost: courage, curiosity, and the determination to rise above limitations. One evening, Lyra stood on a high cliff, gazing at the stars where the humans had vanished. She thought of the lessons they had shared: resilience, adaptability, ingenuity, and heart. She realized that her journey was far from over. Humans had inspired her, but it was now her responsibility to ensure their spirit lived on through her people. Aaron joined her quietly. "You have changed, Xiphora, Lyra," he said softly. "And perhaps, in doing so, you have changed yourself as well." Lyra smiled. "Humans showed me something I could never have learned alone," she said. "That courage, creativity, and determination can overcome even the greatest challenges, and that we, too, can be extraordinary if we choose to embrace the impossible." Aaron nodded. "Then your obsession was never misplaced. It was a path to something greater for you and for Xiphora." And, as night fell, Lyra felt a sense of peace. She had uncovered the fascinating truth about humans, and through them, she had discovered the potential within herself and her planet. Humans were ordinary, yes, but their spirit had inspired extraordinary change. And now, Xiphora was ready to follow in their footsteps. Lyra looked up at the stars, feeling a quiet determination settle over her. The humans had shown her the way, but it was up to her to carry the torch. She would continue to learn, to teach, and to inspire. She would ensure that Xiphora remembered the lessons humans had offered, that bravery, ingenuity, and heart were stronger than fear, rigidity, or doubt. And with that resolve, Lyra stepped forward, ready to face whatever challenges awaited. The humans had left Xiphora, but their spirit and the extraordinary truth they embodied would live on forever. The story of human courage and ingenuity had been shared, and through Lyra, Xiphora had begun to awaken. The extraordinary journey had come full circle, and a new era of hope and discovery was about to begin.